Hi, okay. Hey everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our Capacity Building for Nonprofits webinar. So my name is Asia Caldwell and I am the Media and Marketing Vista for the Collaborative. The Collaborative's mission is to close the wealth gap in North Carolina by ensuring that everyone has a pathway to prosperity. So before we get started, we have a few housekeeping announcements. This webinar is being recorded and can be accessed on our website later this week. So don't worry if you come in late or missed anything. And remember that this is a group discussion. However, all webinar attendees are muted at the start to ensure sound quality. Be sure to share comments or ask questions by using the Q&A feature on your screen. And I'll be sure to get back with you with any answers. And we want to maximize your webinar experience. So please keep in mind that you don't need to be an expert and we're all here to learn. So we welcome all of your questions and insights. And also, please feel free to get comfortable and engage with us. And throughout the program, please be considering ways that an AmeriCorps Vista can support your work. So for today's agenda, we will start with some context around Vista and then quickly move into a discussion on the specifics of bringing a Vista on board to serve your site. So now I will turn it over to Jada Haynes, who will be leading today's discussion.
Thanks, Asia. My name is Jada Haynes, and I am the Vista leader for the Collaborative. I started with the organization in 2019 as the Special Projects Manager, and then transitioned to the Vista leader for my second term. As the Vista leader, I coordinate programming around professional development and national service initiatives. I also serve as the liaison between Vistas and the sites, helping with collecting timesheets and answering questions on Vista protocol and requirements. So we're going to kick off today's discussion with a poll so that we can gauge who we have on the call and what information y'all need to learn about Vista today. So the question is, how familiar are you with AmeriCorps Vista? I am not at all familiar with this program. I have heard of AmeriCorps and have a general understanding of it. I am an AmeriCorps Vista alum. I have hosted or managed an AmeriCorps Vista. And if your answer is other, please feel free to share in the chat box so others can see and engage with you. Okay, so we're gonna let some answers keep rolling in for a couple more seconds. Okay, and we are going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So it looks like that some of you are familiar with AmeriCorps Vista, and we have a few alum on the call, and a lot of you are not familiar with AmeriCorps Vista, but we are going to handle that today. So we're going to get started with our discussion. Thank you for sharing, and we're going to get started with our discussion. So Marquita, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and the involvement in AmeriCorps?
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be talking with you all today about one of my favorite programs at the Collaborative, AmeriCorps Vista. The Collaborative has several different programs and initiatives to support our overall mission to address wealth inequities and providing nonprofits across North Carolina with a full-time paid Vista for a year has without a doubt been the most impactful. Last year, our Vista supported 1,100 adults in job placement programs, and we worked with over 839 youth and managed 1,250 additional community volunteers. And these are just a few of the impact numbers. And I also want to emphasize that this webinar, from the planning into the execution until now, is all being run by Vista. And this really speaks to the power of Vista. And also 99% of the Collaborators programs and the work that we do is run by Vista. So I just wanted to share that. So here are some of our current partners, and these are all North Carolina organizations. And these are, nonprofits from the east to the west that are hosting Vistas this year. This diagram illustrates how we support nonprofits in hosting a Vista. As you can see, Vista falls under AmeriCorps. The Collaborative plays the intermediary role, coordinating with the regional office to handle Vista application and the program and the grant administration for our participating organizations. Our member organizations that bring on Vista are called Vista subsites. The subsite supervisor is the person at your organization that will manage the Vista.
Thanks, Marquita. So we understand where the site falls into AmeriCorps. So what exactly is a VISTA?
All right, so VISTA stands simply for Volunteers in Service to America. It's a mission-driven program designed to build capacity in nonprofits and communities working with the poor. The core principles center around moving communities out of poverty rather than making poverty more tolerable through short-term services by engaging in planning, development, and implementation of projects.
Okay, so you mentioned that VISTAs build capacity. What does that mean?
Yes, Vistas build capacity. Vistas can research and apply for new funding sources like grants or in-kind donations. They can recruit and train volunteers. They can establish new partnerships with donors, the media, community stakeholders. They can design and implement databases to track donors and volunteers. They can create templates for outreach and event planning. They can plan and they can plan webinars as we're seeing them do today. They can do many, many things. But what Vistas cannot do is provide direct service. Vista is not hiring a receptionist or an assistant. In other words, you can bring a Vista on, you cannot bring a Vista on to be a receptionist, but you can bring a Vista on to build your program, develop a plan, and write grants, etc. Vistas cannot be your counselor, but they can build capacity for your counseling program by improving efficiencies in your education and processes to help folks manage credit, obtain and maintain home ownerships. They can work on all these processes. And they can also do things like assist in researching and launching collaborative agencies and that sort of thing.
So it sounds like AmeriCorps Vistas are making an impact at their organizations. And how do they make an impact in North Carolina?
Vistas have efficiently addressed challenges like education equity, disaster response, community development in North Carolina. And the numbers at the bottom of the screen represent some of the impact AmeriCorps has had in North Carolina. Last year, when we were thrust into COVID-19, a lot of the Vistas at their sites transitioned to support COVID-19 from helping process loans through emergency funding and all sorts of things. So Vistas are, if you think of the National Guard and when there's an emergency or crisis, they're there to help. Vistas also help within their capacity as well.
Thanks, Marquita. So we see how Vistas benefit organizations greatly, but what do the Vistas get out of this themselves?
So that's a good question. And this is something that I like to stress is that to serve as a Vista is a great sacrifice. The living allowance is set at the area poverty level and only covers basic needs. I share and stress this for several reasons. It's important to communicate this when you're recruiting for the position and for myself and participating organizations to really appreciate the great sacrifice during our general interactions with our Vistas. With that said, these are some of the benefits that Vista will receive through their service, and some worth noting are the Education Award, the healthcare benefit, and the non-competitive advantage for federal jobs after serving.
Thanks, Marquita. So what are the eligibility requirements for an organization to host an AmeriCorps Vista?
This is probably our number one question. In short, any nonprofit with work that supports low-income families to move them out of poverty are eligible, as long as the Vista is being brought on to build capacity.
And with that, what are your expectations of the nonprofits who are interested in hosting AmeriCorps Vista?
So Vistas need support and guidance from their supervisors. Every Vista is different. Some are local and they're very familiar with the community. Some will come from other parts of our country to serve in our small towns, and they won't know anything about the community. So the quality of support that our subsites or our site supervisors provide often determine the success of their Vista service experience. Participating organizations are responsible for handling Vista onboarding, orienting and training, introducing them to staff, making sure they know where the copier is and that sort of thing. They also are responsible for providing workspace the supplies, equipment for the Vista. During remote work, that could be a laptop or a printer or something like that. They're also responsible for supervising the Vista and providing guidance, support, and coaching, and also monitoring the Vista's attendance and leave.
Okay, so we've learned about how an organization can be a part of this program. So now we're going to take another poll to learn more about the needs of your organizations on the call. So please take a moment to answer the question on your screen. What do you anticipate needing to host in AmeriCorps Vista? Getting started, managing another individual, finding space for another individual, executing knowledge transfer, and if it's other, please feel free to share what other needs you may have in the chat. Okay, the responses are coming in, and we're going to let them come in for a couple more seconds. Okay, so we are going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. So it looks like most of you on the call need help with getting started. So we're going to jump back into our discussion and hopefully get that answer for you. So Marquita, how does the collaborative support sites in bringing on a Vista?
Sure. So first thing I want to share back to the poll is that if you're having, if that's where you need the most support at is getting started, you are in the right place. So the collaborative is your very intimate partner through the Vista process. We look very much like a staffing agency for Vista. We handle all the administration of the program from start to finish, as we illustrated in that diagram at the beginning of the webinar. The collaborative will provide overall project training and orient Vistas and the site supervisors. We provide professional development opportunities and support for the Vistas. We secure the resources for smooth and effective execution of your project. We manage biweekly payroll information. We assist with recruitment. We handle the annual monitoring visits, and we provide project timelines. We also support you in creating the description, or what we call the VAD, the Vista Assignment Description, which really outlines and identifies the work that your Vista will be doing during their service term. We're also responsive to our partners' needs. For example, most of our Vistas are working remote during this time, and we've been very hands-on, as our sites like, to support them in developing a teleworking management plan for sites and supporting them through all of that.
So you mentioned teleworking. So what does hosting a Vista look like during COVID-19?
So like everything else, Vista is different during COVID-19. Our Vistas follow the host site's policies. If your organization is working remote, Vista would work remote. If your organization reports to the office daily, so will the Vista. If it is a rotating schedule, the Vista will rotate in that schedule at some point. If they're serving remote, they also will be following your remote working policies, whatever they are. You will be responsible for providing the resources for them to work from home. And you also need to be more hands-on in communication and project guidance with them at a distance. Vistas will not have had that opportunity, those that are working from home, to come in and be onboarded and integrated into your organization the way some may have in the past, or way your employees have. So, void of that, you're going to have to be a bit more hands-on.
Thank you, Marquita. So what is the timeline for bringing a Vista on board?
So this is a typical AmeriCorps Vista cycle. In spring, we do Vista recruitment, and we're starting to edge into our Vista recruitment cycle now. During the summer is when we usually bring on our Vistas, and the fall is when our professional development and hands-on support for the Vistas begin. And the winter is when we start planning for the upcoming cycle of AmeriCorps Vista.
Okay, so let's say that someone on this call is interested in hosting a Vista. What should their next steps be?
So the next step should be to schedule a consultation with me. Following this webinar, we'll be emailing you guys some information on how to get in, how to schedule a consultation. And during that consultation, we'll talk about the specific needs of your organization and how this would work for your organization. All vistas are required to sign an MOU for a year, and then we'll move on to recruiting and the vistas will start. And that is pretty much how the vista cycle, the next steps to bringing someone on board.
Okay, great. So it sounds like the collaborative makes it easy for sites to join and become a part of AmeriCorps Vista program. So now that ends our discussion and we're going to enter into a Q&A portion. We did have some questions that came in during registration, so I will go ahead and ask you those before we get to the questions in the chat. So the first question is, how competitive is this process?
So to host a Vista in North Carolina, it is not an extremely competitive process. However, I will share over the past few years, we have been very intentional in our recruitment of sites. And so there is a lot of interest. So if you are interested, I encourage you to move as quickly as possible so you can, so we can start recruiting for you and your locale as soon as possible.
And what qualifications or credentials do Vistas have?
All of our Vistas are required to have a bachelor's degree. A lot of the work that our sites request really benefit from the skills that are achieved through a bachelor's degree. So anyone that we recruit for and we send over to you will have completed the 4-year bachelor's program.
What is the requirement for an organization to participate?
So any nonprofit in North Carolina that is focused on anti-poverty efforts, that works with low-income families, financial inclusion, financial ability, are eligible to host AmeriCorps Vista to come into their organization to build capacity, to expand programs, to enhance offerings and that sort of thing.
Okay, and does the nonprofit have to pay any portion of the volunteer salary?
No, the salary is handled through the collaborative and through a relationship that we have with the regional office. However, all of our sites are asked to pay a cost share, and the cost share is a part of a larger cost share that we pay to participate in the program. And it also covers the administration of the program, from payroll services to background checks and all that sort of thing.
Can an AmeriCorps member do housing counseling?
So that is a great question. And we kind of hit on this earlier. So housing counseling would be considered direct service. And so while they cannot come on to be your housing counselor, they can build capacity for your housing counseling program by improving the efficiency in the counseling process to help folks manage their credit, obtain and maintain home ownership and that sort of thing. And they can also do things like research, apply for grants, help you to establish coalitions and that sort of thing.
Okay, and the last question from registration before I turn it over to Asia for questions in the chat is, I'm in rural Eastern North Carolina. Is TA support available in filling out the application to host the Vista?
Absolutely. You don't have to complete an application to host a Vista through our project. We handle the application. We have an intake form that I call application for our sites that gets information that we can use to submit, but it is not, it is a PDF document that we made, and it's about 5 or 6 questions to get a better idea of your organization. So the application is, for this process, I wouldn't even call it an application, but an intake form. And we're happy to support you through that process, 100%.
Great, thanks, Marquita. So now I'll turn it over to Asia to answer some questions that are coming into the chat.
Okay, so our first question we have is, what is the anticipated weekly time commitment of a Vista?
So Vistas work full time, and most of our Vistas work 35 hours a week, which is really 40 hours with an hour lunch. but that depends on your site. If your site gives full-time folks 30 minutes, then they would fall in that 30-minute range. I encourage Vistas and sites to give the Vistas an hour lunch, but that is a recommendation and that's based off of your site. But Vistas work full-time for a year. They are provided 10 paid 10 paid personal days, 10 paid sick days, and whatever holidays your organization observes.
So we have two people asking how much is the cost share?
So the cost share is there is a cap at around $6,000 for the entire year, and that like I said, that covers the cost share for the project. It covers background checks, payroll, and all the administration of the grant. And I call this a cost share because I want to stress that I don't want you to think about it as paying part of the salary because it's not that. It is a cost share to participate in the program.
Okay. We have someone asking, we are working on an asset map / verifying information for a database. Would that be a project a Vista could help with?
That very much sounds like a Vista project, and it looks like my camera went out, but it very much looks like a Vista project. We have done some asset mapping in the past, so absolutely. My thought is for you to schedule some time so we can talk through the specifics of the project and move from there.
Okay, and that wraps up the questions in the Q&A.
All right, and so I see a question, what is the amount of the cost share in the chat? Is the $6,000 cost share per Vista member or per program? That is typically per Vista member. Are there any additional questions? Okay. This was a pretty quick call. And if there are no—
Marquita, one more actually just came in. It says,
okay,
we only have part-time employees, roughly 30. Would we qualify to host a Vista?
Your Vista would have to work full-time. And that we can talk about the specifics of that and what that looks like, but the Vista would need to work full times. And the reason behind that, that's not a Marquita rule or the collaborative rule, but it's the federal programs rule, because they want Vistas to have equity across the program. And it wouldn't be fair if a Vista somewhere was working 30 hours and then a Vista somewhere else is working 35, but receiving the same pay.
And we have a couple more that came in also. It says, can they work from home only?
So Vistas are required to work at a site. The exception is during COVID-19, where we are all working remote, but during normal times, Vistas work at a site. They can telework spontaneously and not scheduled or not on they can't work from home every other Friday. And these are not my rules, these are program rules. But and even then, when they're allowed to work from home, it is not during the first 3 months of service.
Okay, and then we are a community college with a foundation that is a nonprofit, and we are expanding our student supports, including a food pantry. Would we qualify?
Absolutely. If you, the food pantry sounds very much like a Vista project. We would want to talk specifics, but it sounds very much like that is something that, very much like something that Vista would support.
Okay, and then I will answer the last question live, and it just says, can you repost the email address to set up an appointment for a consultation? We are actually going to be sending out a follow-up email with all of this information that we presented today that will include the consultation email address and the webinar recording if you want to revisit some of the information.
see one more question that says, can two nonprofits share one full-time Vista?
So I would need to likely not. And we can talk specifics about that. For one, is unless the two nonprofits were working together on a project, that might be a bit stressful for the Vista to have two positions and that sort of thing. But we can talk through the specifics of that. But just on first start, I think that would be a bit challenging.
Okay, I think that wraps up the questions. Sorry, go ahead, Judy.
Well, I see Sarah says the invite was forwarded to me. How can I get on the follow-up? Did you register? If you registered for the email, you will get, if you registered for this webinar, you will get the follow-up. And I'm guessing you registered from the Evite. If not, if you did not register, put your email in the chat. And someone said, what is the process for someone to become a Vista? And so the process for someone to become a Vista would be to apply. We have a link on our website for Vistas to apply, or to email us, and we can get that information to them. Yes, Lisa, Vistas have been placed at universities. So Vistas are paid. It depends on your area. Thank you, Sarah. It depends on your area, and Vistas are paid. Jada, can you confirm this? I think it's right around $13,900 a year.
Yes, that is the correct amount.
Okay. And so they're paid that a year in biweekly payments. They are also at the end of their service term, they have the option to get an end of year stipend, end of service stipend, or to get an education award. The education award is set at the Pell Grant amount, and usually I think it's around $6,200 they get at the end of service. And there are some other benefits as well, but that is a very modest stipend for AmeriCorps Vistas, and this is set at the federal level. But I shared this earlier, and I'll share it again, that considering the stipend, this is a great sacrifice for Vistas, and we like to keep that in mind.
Someone asked, what about placing with cooperative extension?
Yes, as long as the AmeriCorps Vista is, building capacity within that program, that's absolutely fine. And so, Thomas, I would love, I think that would be awesome. I wish I could have this year's Vistas. Thomas asked if if he could have one of this year's Vistas as his site for next year. But all of the Vistas on this call are going off. A lot of Vistas use this time for a gap year in between graduating with their bachelor's degree and going on for a professional degree. And on the call, I have people, all of the Vistas on this call. One has been accepted into many, many med schools. One has been accepted into a law school, and one has been accepted into a public health program for a master's in public health. So they will all be doing great things next year, not with me. Another question I had is, do we have challenge finding Vistas? Not necessarily. If we recruit if you talk with us now and we start looking for a Vista for your site now, and we like to do that around April or May when folks are graduating, we don't usually have a hard time. If you wait and try to get a Vista after the spring, summer, around September and October, from September to I would say to March or April, it's really hard to recruit for a Vista during that time because people are usually doing something already. The good candidates are usually already committed to either a job or another Vista position. We encourage you guys to recruit on your own. Someone said, Sarah asked, could we recommend someone to apply? Absolutely. We do a statewide recruit and we recruit locally for you, but the folks that you know in your community that you think would be good candidates for this are often the best candidates, and we totally encourage that.
Well, Marquita, I think that is everyone. Thank you all for a great conversation. And I know, Marquita, you want to wrap up the presentation?
Yeah, if there are no more questions, right? I want to make sure I'm not missing anyone.
I think we got them all this time.
Okay, all right, good deal. Well, thank you all for joining us on this call today. A special thank you to Jada for facilitating, for Asia for handling our Q&A and opening up the call, and Lexus for being our background producer of the webinar. All Vistas, all very thankful for the sacrifice and the added strength that they bring to our organization in North Carolina. And if we don't have any other questions or anything, if you're interested in learning more about having a Vista or hosting a Vista, respond to the email that you'll receive later on today. And I look forward to talking with you. You guys enjoy this beautiful near spring day. Thank you all for joining.